Hey there, Scott the Pie Guy here. Thanks for tuning in. Still not a baker, just some guy out there making a pie. Today we're going to do something a little bit different than what we've done in previous videos. Uh, I'm actually going to try a no-bake pie, and we're going to do it with a very interesting ingredient, grapefruit. Hopefully this thing turns out, and we'll see how it goes. We did a lot of the work early. Had help from my wife earlier today. We have 4 grapefruits that we cut into pieces, pulled them out. My wife's idea was better than mine, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. So that's 4 grapefruit there. Juice from the grapefruit, 3/4 of a cup. The recipe I'm using calls for half a cup of sugar. I actually bumped that up to 3/4 of a cup of sugar, primarily because it also called for Jell-O, and I'm not gonna use the Jell-O. I didn't want the Jell-O-y texture, so instead of using the gelatin to thicken it, we're going with arrowroot and place of cornstarch as well. It's going to be Jell-O and the cornstarch that was going to thicken it. So we have 4.5 teaspoons of arrowroot, and of course I got my pie crust already made up, chilled it overnight. We're going to roll that out, bake it, and then start adding the stuff. So we'll get started on rolling this out. Set most of our stuff aside, rolled out the pie crust. Might have added a little bit too much water to this one because it's pretty soft. But now we're just going to slide it over into my pan. Set that aside. Work it down a little bit. Probably could have rolled it a little bit thicker, but that's okay. So we're going to put this in the oven for roughly a half an hour to bake it. Trim this thing. Oops, problems here. There we go, there's some extra. We'll figure out what we're going to do with that. So 375, about a half an hour. We'll check it midway through. And then we're going to prink some air holes in it to let it steam out a little bit. But that's about it. When it's done, we'll come back and load it all up. I'm back, I lied. I need to put pie weights in to help keep the crust from bubbling up. So now that they're in, now we're gonna put it in the oven for 30 minutes. There, that should be better. Pie crust is all baked up. Pan's a little hot, but it looks pretty good. One benefit of trimming the edges is you also have the opportunity to make a nice, lovely hand pie. Ham and cheddar for that one. But back to the tangerine pie. Grapefruit pie. Sorry, I heard about a tangerine pie a while ago and thought that was probably what I was doing. So we have the diced up grapefruits. Those are just going to go in the bottom of the pan. I'm just going to dump them in all in one. Set that aside. You know, I was worried that it would not fill the crust, but it actually has done a pretty good job of doing that. So spread them around a little bit here. Try to fill as many gaps as possible. I think that's looking pretty good. And so then the next step is we're going to make a sauce that's going to go on top of that. So our 3/4 cup of grapefruit juice. Extra sugar. Again, it called for half a cup and I did 3/4 just because we're not using the Jell-O that called for, which would also sweeten it up. So we're going to put that in there and get ready to stir it around a little bit. So we're going to bring that to a boil over on the stove, and at the very end, I'm going to add the arrowroot. So that's how we're going to go. Got the last step here. Boiled up the grapefruit juice and sugar. There's still a good amount of heat. So next we're gonna add the arrowroot. I did have a little bit of extra grapefruit juice left, so I made a nice little roux with it, and we're gonna add that in. One thing I learned about the arrowroot, it works really good with the acidic foods, which of course the grapefruit will be there, and it doesn't change the color, and it works very well at the end of the heating process. So we're adding at the end here. Get as much of that in as possible. Here we go. Take this back, stir it around a little bit, and then next comes, just gonna dump it in. I'm gonna try and dump it really slow. Don't make too big a mess. Whoops. See if we can do this here. You know, and I think it's a really good amount. Some of the grapefruit started to float a little bit, which is good. There we go. Set that aside. Whoa, a little tricky there. Not gonna pick it up. Too liquidy. And this is actually gonna chill overnight. So we're gonna put it in the fridge. I'm gonna move it very carefully. So I'm gonna do that off camera, and we'll come back tomorrow. We are back for day 2 of grapefruit pie, and we're gonna need more. It came out, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it is really liquidy. So we're gonna try and save it though. We give you an overview of what we're gonna do. Got my handy dandy baster. We're gonna pull all the juice out, put it in the cup, the measuring cup, top it off with water to 2 cups, and I'm gonna go with the Jell-O. Sometimes I guess you need to listen to the instructions. Although I'm not using strawberry Jell-O, I am going to be using some mango Jell-O. So this will be a mango grapefruit pie, and we'll see what it is. So we're gonna start pulling out the juice and top it off, cook it down, and away we go. Okay, we got the juice for the most part drained out, topped it off with, to make it 2 cups of liquid. The package calls for 4. I'm only going to use about half the package because it's not all going to go in there. So I cut it to 2. So there's that. Then roughly measure about half the package. Oops. A little more. Okay, so we got half the package measured, and now we're going to boil this, add the Jell-O, let it cool a little bit while this is cooking. Just because the liquid's been sitting in there for a really long time, I'm going to just pop it in the oven. Hopefully if there's any latent liquid coming down to the bottom, it'll harden it up, harden the crust up a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. We got our liquid boiled. Now I'm just going to add the gelatin in there, stir it around, get it dissolved. I also spread out the grapefruit a little bit to hopefully get it a little bit more balanced in there. So you can see it's kind of an orange, very orange in there. So now we'll just pour this in. Slowly but surely. I knew I wouldn't use all of it. I want some of the grapefruit to show through. I'm going to leave that sit just a little bit to cool off since that's a really hot liquid. Pop it in the fridge and come back for day number 3. Back for day number 3 of grapefruit pie. We're going to start today making some whipped cream. And we got half a cup of heavy whipping cream, tablespoon of confectioner's sugar. Actually, hang on one second. I'll scrape this a little. tablespoon of confectioner's sugar. From what I read, it doesn't matter which you use, regular or confectioner's, but I had more confectioner's, so that's what we're doing. And a teaspoon of vanilla. And we're just gonna whip this up really quick. Starting it slow. Okay, we're gonna call that good. Okay, we got the whipped cream ready. And as last time we left, the pie was really, really liquidy. And first and foremost, I want to say, I'm not sure I'm going to call this pie, but it's set really well. But really, honestly, it looks like Jell-O with fruit and a pie crust to me. But we're going with it. That's what it is. So again, yeah, it's set up really well with the Jell-O. And now we'll get to the true test and cut into this. Yeah, I'm not even sure this cuts real well. I grabbed a cheese knife because I was a little bit worried about how it might stick on the knife and not cut, but it's definitely Jell-O. But it does appear to be holding together, which is good. So we'll cut one more like this. Crust held up. Very pleased with that. There we go. And now comes the test. See how this thing pulls out. Looks pretty. Held up really well. Slide that out of the side. Grab a spoon. Little dollop of cream on top. Pretty looking pie, or so they say. And now the taste. It's definitely Jell-O. But the crust, I will say, I'm amazed at the crust. It held up really well through this. A little bit of bite there. Yeah, it doesn't work for me. I'm not sure on the flavor. This one was, it's saved, but yeah, I'm not doing this one again. But anyways, it was fun. It looks good, and we'll see what happens to the rest of this pie. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you another time.